Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 16.2 and iOS 16.3 Beta 1 have been out for about a week and a half at this point, and of course we're always waiting for the next update, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but I wanted to talk about some new features and changes that I didn't mention in the initial iOS 16.2 and iOS 16.3 Beta 1 is out video. There's just a couple things to talk about. Also, I wanted to talk about some more bugs and battery life and some things that are going on with iOS 16.2 and 16.3 since its release. Now, the first thing is within Notes. I mentioned before, one of the new features in iOS 16.2 is that it will actually show you when you're collaborating with someone that there's a little cursor there and that they're actually changing something in real time. If you're in a note that you're collaborating with someone on, and this is one I had from a long time ago, if we go to the person in the top that we're collaborating with, we'll have a new option here for participant cursors. So there's an option, make sure it's turned on. It's on by default, but if it's off and you don't want to see that, you can turn it off. It will stop showing you the cursor and what they're updating in real time, but it's nice that they've added that option here. Also in iOS 16.2, there's a new option for a widget. So if we go to our widgets, press and hold on our home screen, go to Customize, tap on Lock Screen. I still think that's way too many taps. And then we go to our different widgets, scroll down, and you'll see that we have different widgets here for stocks. If we go to stocks, before we had our watch list and we also had our symbol before. Now we also have a third option that's symbol with chart. So that's something that's a little bit new with 16.2 that I didn't mention in the initial video and completely missed. So you'll see you've got 3 options now instead of just 2. Also, something that was a little tricky to do was the enabling of advanced security protection. That's something that's new with iOS 16.2, and you had to update all of your devices. I now have it enabled, and you can find that by going into your settings, tapping on your name at the top and then iCloud, and if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see advanced data protection. That's enabled on my phone where it's encrypting everything end to end on all my devices. So everything from device backup to messages backup, iCloud Drive, notes, photos, reminders, bookmarks, Siri shortcuts, voice memos, and wallet passes. And of course, I have recovery set up just in case I have an issue and I need to recover that. But that's been enabled, and it's something that I'm glad is there. I highly recommend you enable it if you care about privacy. I've been getting a lot of questions about that, and I would enable it if you care about that or different privacy. That way it's completely encrypted end to end. Apple doesn't have the keys or anything else. There's also a couple new releases I wanted to mention. Apple mentioned one in their keynote a while ago when it comes to the iPad. So if we go on the iPad, any iPad that will support it, we go to the App Store, and within the App Store, if you search for DaVinci Resolve for iPad, the app is finally here. You can try it for free, and it looks like when it says get, it means there's add-on options. And you'll see here it says DaVinci Resolve for iPad is optimized for the iPad Pro with M1 and M2 chips. Earlier and iPad models, I think that's a typo, earlier and iPad models with memory limitations have limited functionality available. So it's available now, and you can see that you can color grade, you can edit a timeline, and this is more of a traditional editor as opposed to LumaFusion, for example. So you can try this out. This is the same as the app that's on Windows and Mac, and it's a really great app, especially for color grading. So you can try that out now if you have a supporting device. Now, back in the App Store on iPhone, SparkMail got a major update this week with widgets. So it brought new widgets for your lock screen to see information at a glance. More and more apps are updating not only widgets, but also live activities such as Uber Eats and things like that. So it's great to see more and more people and more developers take advantage of the new features of iOS 16. Now, I personally don't use Spark. I use the stock Mail app, typically for privacy. Usually when you have a free Mail app, it's able to offer it to you free because they have some sort of service that they're using your data for, and they're able to give you the app free. Many don't do that. They just charge third-party fees for different things if you want it for business, for example, but many apps do that. I'm curious which app you use for your Mail app. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Now, this past week with iOS 16.2, a lot of people were having issues with the Home app. Home has a new architecture in it that was upgraded with iOS 16.2, and Apple actually pulled that option to upgrade it. That's because multiple people, whether that was on Reddit and other places, I actually did a Twitter post about this, and many people stated that they had issues with it deleting their network, deleting their devices, things not working, and so they pulled that new architecture upgrade option. So if you were having that issue, just know you're not alone. Apple's aware, and they'll probably patch it very soon. Also, to go along with Home, if we go and tap plus in the upper right, many people are not seeing the Add People button anymore. Now, whether or not they already upgraded to that new architecture or not is hard to say, but it's there for me, and I'm on family sharing, so I can quickly add people, but you still should have the option even if you aren't. So many people are seeing issues within the Home app, and I do expect Apple to patch that. Another reason they may patch it soon with iOS 16.2.1 is iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max users seem to be having some odd lines across their screen. Typically, it's after watching a video for a while and when they wake the phone up. It will present lines across the screen, almost like it has a problem with the LCD panel. However, it seems that this is a software issue and not a hardware issue. Multiple people on Reddit actually said that they brought it to Apple, and Apple acknowledged that they're aware of the issue and it's due to the drivers of the display. They definitely think a software issue is the problem, and an update is expected to come soon to resolve this. Now, the catch is it's now Christmas time in the holiday season all around the world. So because of that, we have Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and then following Christmas, of course, we have New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Normally, the week in between that, we don't have any updates, but maybe we will in order to patch these serious issues, or maybe they'll wait until the first or second week of January to do it. Typically, they wait until the second week of January. So it's hard to say if that's what they're going to do this time around, as that's typically when we get iOS 16.3 Beta 2 should come out the second week of January. So hopefully we see an update before then, but typically with the vacation over holiday times, it doesn't seem likely. But either way, we could see something we haven't seen before as far as that goes. Now, as far as overall battery life with this update, now that we've been using it for about a week and a half, many people have installed it, had time for it to finish processing in the background and more. However, with the beta, it hasn't been great for me. So if we go into settings, go down to battery, go to battery health and charging, I'm down to 99%. I showed that before, and you can see my cycle count here. We'll just keep track of this as the year progresses. And let's take a look at the last 10 days. So if we go back to yesterday, I actually used it quite a bit. I had 4 hours and 28 minutes of screen active time, 3 hours and 47 minutes of screen idle time. But I used about 80 to 90% of my battery. That's really not very good. I should be getting 10 to 12 hours of screen on time. So you'll see the day before, I used over 50% of my battery just for about 3 hours of screen active time. That's pretty low compared to what we had before. Now, not everyone is experiencing the same thing. Some people are saying they have great battery life with the beta. Others are saying that they don't. However, with iOS 16.2, now that it's settled down quite a bit for many people, many are seeing very good battery life with it. So overall, battery life seems to be good for some, not for others. In fact, my wife hasn't complained about it at all. However, I am running iPadOS 16.2 on my M2 iPad Pro, and it's not great either here. So I keep having issues with it. I've fully wiped the device, tried over multiple times on other devices. Just doesn't seem to be getting better for me. But over the last 10 days, you'll see it was last charged a few days ago to 100%. So if we take a look at Wednesday when it was charged, I had 2 hours and 13 minutes of screen active or screen on time. The next day I used it for 51 minutes. Then today I used it for 14. So combined together, that's pretty poor. Of course, it's in standby at night. But combined together, that's really not great battery life. I should be getting at least 8 hours just using it regularly, maybe even 7 if I'm streaming YouTube all the time. But for whatever reason, it's not lasting very well. Hopefully it gets better. And again, here's my overall battery health based off of Coconut Battery, since the iPad doesn't actually have battery health built in. Next, let's talk about overall cellular connectivity. With the recent beta and iOS 16.2, I really haven't heard many complaints about it. That's a good sign. I haven't had any disconnects. Initially, I had some issues with YouTube, but I think it was YouTube's issue where they updated the app and fixed it, where it was a problem where you were watching something, then you'd go back into the app and it would say you have no internet connection, even though you did. turn off Wi-Fi, it would work, turn Wi-Fi back on, and it would still work. It was only with YouTube, but most people are saying reception is good. I haven't had any dropped calls, whether that's on 16.2 or the beta, and it's been pretty good that way. However, with AirPods, there's still a few bugs. So there's connectivity bugs for some, and you'll see it's not connecting right now. There we go. It just took a moment. That sometimes can take longer when there's a bunch of devices around, but within the battery widget, if I'm using them, oftentimes the case doesn't even show for me, or for others, it shows that it's at 0%, even though the case is fully charged. This is a bug. Again, they'll need to patch with a new iOS version, hopefully iOS 16.2.1. We can use a lot of bug fixes here. Also, a lot of people are having issues with notifications. So in notifications, some people are seeing ghosting where they sort of have blank ones or they're covering over another. Others are seeing kind of oversized summaries of the day. And then other people are just seeing them not come in all together. And I'm actually seeing multiples of the same one sometimes. I have a garage door opener that actually connects through an app. And sometimes it lets me know it's opened and closed about 4 times for every time. So there's definitely some odd bugs. It could be that app as well, but there's definitely some bugs with these updates, whether it's the beta or not. One other bug that's still there is the YouTube rotation bug. Now, this is seemingly across all of iOS. So if I rotate, you'll see it's a little stuttery there, going back and forth. It's not smooth like it used to be. Some people see it just in YouTube, others see it throughout the OS. So hopefully that gets resolved very soon. It's unlike Apple to have such a sort of choppy experience. So hopefully it's maybe just an app update thing, but if you're seeing it throughout the OS, let me know in the comments below. And that swipe home bug has returned. So swiping home, if you're in music, for example, playing, you'll see it just stuttered there again. So we'll go home, swipe, it's a little stuttery. Sometimes it's even slower than that. So if we go back in, let's close out music, try it again. We'll just play the same song, let it load here, swipe home. That time it was better. Oftentimes I swipe home and it just is really stuttery depending on what I'm doing. Why that keeps coming back is hard to say. However, there was mention that Apple really was working on a new graphics processor for the iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max, and it was delayed. That was some news this past week. Maybe it has something to do with that, where they had to write the drivers last minute, get everything working properly. But it's odd that it keeps happening over and over, as it should be much better. So hopefully it improves with the next update again. Now that does go along with performance a little bit. Performance other than that swipe home stutter seems to be fine, whether it's on an old device or a new device. For whatever reason, it just keeps seeming to come back over and over. And if we bring in iPhone 11, as we swipe back and forth, it's nice and smooth. If we go into things like weather, as long as it's loaded, it's fairly smooth. Sometimes while it's loading, it's a little stuttery. If we open up the cameras, nice and fast. You shouldn't miss anything there, but just again, swiping home sometimes is a little bit stuttery. As far as the overall heat, my phone has been fairly cool, but not everyone has the same experience. I never really worry about this personally because iOS manages that. There's thermal sensors in there, but I did want to share the thermal camera with you in just a moment here, but basically it stays nice and cool for me. iOS 16.2 is going to have different results for different people. I've heard from a lot of you that it's getting too hot. I've heard from a lot of you that it's fine. So it really depends on the individual device and what you're doing. Now let me bring back the iPhone 11 just so we can take a look. They're both fairly cool to touch, but as you can see here, the iPhone 11 is definitely nice and cool, where the iPhone 14 Pro Max is working a little bit more, just because I've had it on screen more. So we're at about 30.1 degrees Celsius. Let's switch to Fahrenheit. And as you can see in the same area, we're at about 86.9 degrees Fahrenheit or 87 degrees Fahrenheit. So not terribly warm. That seems to be what we've had before. Now I just ran benchmarks on both of these and wanted to show you the heat after that. Anytime you put a processor to work, it's going to bump up the overall heat. Now we're at 95 degrees Fahrenheit on the iPhone 14 or 14 Pro Max, and you'll see that the iPhone 11 is the same thing. It really bumped up over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'll show you the conversions on the screen. So you're going fine to have it get warm anytime it's processing data. And as far as those benchmarks are concerned, it's pretty good. With the iPhone 11, we have 1,325 for single core, 3,457 for multi-core. On the 14 Pro Max, we have 1,861 for single core, 4,838 for multi-core. If we take a look at the history compared to what we had before, you can see there's December, the last time. We'll just bring it up to the top there. Last time it was a little higher for multi-core for sure, and that's probably because I've been doing a bunch of things, using the phone, sharing it with you. So it went down quite a bit, but it would go right back up if I ran it again. You're going to get different results every single time. So on the iPhone 11, it's actually about the same, very, very close. So not really too much of a difference there. Performance seems to be pretty good. Benchmarks are fine. It would get better every time I run it. Sometimes if I run it now, run it 5 minutes from now, it would be even better. Sometimes it'll be worse. Just depends on when you're running it. I have a few of your comments. I just chose them randomly, and you can see the first one says, I'm running iOS 16.2 on an iPhone 13 mini. No performance issues, but battery isn't as great as it was on iOS 16. I also noticed there is an increase in battery usage in the background. First days it was Mail application running, 1 minute on the screen and 3.5 hours off screen. Now seems to be solved for Mail, but still having the same amount of time spent on screen and off screen in the battery stats. Hassan Al-Hadari said, I'm on iOS 16.2 for both my phones, XS Max and 12 Pro. Performance and battery life is good, no bugs, but I have noticed something concerning. My AirPods Pro, before 16.2, the battery of the AirPods case drains so fast, even when not using them. In 24 hours, it drops 15%, and that was because of Find My. When I turned off Find My for my AirPods, it gets perfect and no drains. But now on iOS 16.2, I turned on Find My for my AirPods Pro and the battery is normal. No excessive battery drain. It remains 98% after 24 hours. So that's a good point. It looks like they've fixed that. And we did have some updates not only to Find My, but also AirTags and AirPods as well. Tom Davis says, hey, I'm on iOS 16.2, 14 Pro. First 2 days, the battery wasn't as good as 16.1.2. Now battery life is amazing even with heavy usage. Still have about 25% after a 16-hour day. On the previous version, I wasn't using the always-on display. Now I am without notifications and wallpaper, and it's still as good as 16.1.2 without the always-on display. No stuttering yet, but have the ghost notification problem a lot, but overall loving it so far. And so, like I've said many times before, give it a few days to process everything in the background, and it usually gets better. Not always, but usually. Darren says, my AirPods Pro 2nd Gen keep disconnecting and reconnecting when I'm not listening to anything. Do not know if it's an iOS bug or an AirPods firmware bug. Battery and performance was amazing. iPhone 11 at iOS 16.2. Lou said, awful. My battery is getting very hot and dying a lot faster than usual. I'm on iOS 16.2. And then someone else responded. Cameron says, mine hasn't been that good either with 16.2, and I'm using a 14 Pro Max. And as you scroll through the comments on the YouTube community poll, over 400 of them all seem to have very different results. It's not always consistent, so some people are going to have great battery life, some aren't. So here's someone with 16.3 on a 12 mini that works great so far. The YouTube bug is still there from time to time, the screen orientation glitch, and battery life is mediocre compared to 16.3. Other than these minor issues, it's a great beta for a first. So again, read through some of these comments if you haven't, just to see if you're having similar issues as others, if you're concerned. So thanks for all the feedback there. And of course, that's everything with iOS 16.2 and 16.3 Beta 1. Hopefully we'll have a new update within a couple weeks or a week at this point. I doubt we'll have one in between Christmas and New Year's, but maybe we will, and we'll see an update to fix some issues. We haven't seen that before, but we could see it maybe for a first time. Either way, I look forward to that, and of course the new products coming out this year. If there's anything else you'd love to have me cover in these videos, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below, and of course if you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, it will be linked in the description as it always is. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.